Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Louisa, and today's video I wanted to do a few quick responses to some of the comments in my last video, which was me coming out as converting back to Christianity after my few years in sort of the New Age and the occult and witchcraft. So I'll be responding to a few comments from that video and also messages that I've gotten from other people more privately. But also I thought it would help to outline some of what my research led me to, in particular where the New Age comes from and how it relates to modern day paganism. Because a lot of people, if you didn't get something handed down to you from your family, it's not a traditional tribal practice, most of what people practice in terms of modern day paganism is derived from the New Age, and a lot of the time it's really hard to tell. So I thought I would explain why my research into that aspect actually influenced my decision to go back to Christianity. So the first thing that I wanted to address was particular comments about me being coerced by my partner or being coerced by men in my life. First of all, that's very anti-feminism to suppose that a woman has no agency or no thought process of her own and cannot come to her own decisions in life. I would say that's pretty insulting towards women. In the past I've made videos on coercive control and also on different mental health topics. When I was dealing with a coercive control situation, I did not give in to it. I did everything in my power to get out of it. Also, when it comes to different mental health subjects, I have worked in disability care. I have worked with people who have schizophrenia. I do know what that looks like, and it is not the same thing. It is not the same thing as a demonic attachment. The church knows that. That's why they go to great lengths to have people assessed before they pronounce anything diabolical. They send them to psychiatrists, they send them to physicians, and they have them thoroughly examined and assessed first. And obviously in the case of that particular person, it's not possible to retroactively go back and figure out what was wrong with him because he killed himself. And also there is a big difference between struggling with mental health issues yourself and suddenly being bombarded with thoughts that are just coming out of nowhere and have absolutely nothing to do with who you are or your life. There's a reason why I've been studying mental health, and it's not so that I can sell happy stickers to people and tell them it's gonna be okay, while simultaneously not actually changing anything about my own life or examining my own issues. So the next thing that I want to address is that for some people this came as a shock. It came out of the blue. They were not expecting it. However, this was not a snap decision on my part, and I'm pretty sure I stated that in the last video, but of course people just ignore what you actually say to them and they just hear what they want to hear. But for those of you who have been subscribed for a while, you probably noticed, and in fact a few of you did notice because you commented, when I changed the name of my channel and I started deleting videos. Now this was weeks before I came out with the video saying that I was severing ties from witchcraft permanently. And that's because I don't necessarily make snap decisions. I weigh things up as I go, and I keep an open mind and I assess things. I think that it's very important when new information is given to you that you are able to receive it and able to actually consider it. Because if you spend your entire life being completely inflexible on your opinion about various different things, you'll never actually figure things out. That being said, I came to a decision and I am happy with that decision, and it's not a bad thing, even though some of what I outlined in the previous video probably made it sound like it was a rough journey. But that was kind of an overview of a lifelong journey, and I'm almost 40. I have no ill will towards anyone that I met in the witchcraft community. Most of the people that I met there have no ill will towards me, and they've been fairly respectful as my views have come out on certain subjects that they don't necessarily agree with, but they have respect for me as a human being, and so I respect that. The thing about Christianity is that you can't do both. You can't serve two masters. And that's why in a lot of ways, when it comes to converting to Christianity, if you have been in the occult and you are deciding that you need to exit, you really have to go back to basics. You have to get a real copy of the Bible, not any of those weird channeled New Age versions like the Passion Translation or the Mirror. Something more like the ESV or the NIV or even the King James. Because the thing about the New Age is it's not just in things like paganism, which seem to be something separate, but they're not. It's also in Christianity. And some people who have exited Christianity have done so because of that, not because of necessarily the more traditional church. So another comment that I came across was remarking on the Vice article about meditation and how it has produced psychotic breaks in various different people. They dismissed it as Vice being clickbaity, but the thing is, I'm studying psychology and the jury is not out on meditation. One of the biggest problems that psychology has at the moment is that they can't replicate studies. So when I worked in IT, one of the things that we used to have to do was to try and replicate an issue, like do something that would force it to do the thing that was a problem. And if you couldn't replicate it, then you couldn't really figure out what was wrong. You had to wait until the circumstances recurred and then figure it out from there. Psychology has the same process for research. You have to be able to replicate it in order to verify it. So one study is not really enough to hang your hat on, but it is openly acknowledged that they have completely inconsistent results a lot of the time from the exact same studies. So they go through the process of replicating a study and the results are wildly different. But they kind of go with the majority of results, I guess, even if it might kind of be 50-50. And so psychology is recommending meditation and saying that this is a proven benefit for your mental health. And it's not. So unfortunately, it's really hard to actually quote psychology these days. So another comment that I've had is that I am judging other religions as evil and that I am intolerant. But I'm not pretending to know everything about other religions. My focus is primarily on the difference between New Age practices, which are kind of in everything, and Christianity as it is supposed to be practiced if you refer to the Bible, and explaining why this matters and why you do actually have to pick one, because unfortunately the New Age practices are pretty much devoid of guidelines, and they are practices that are designed to open you up to spiritual activity that you have very little control over. Okay, so what was it about my research process into the occult and the esoteric which kind of led me back to Christianity? Well, the first thing is there's different figures within occult and esoteric history, and some of them are fairly positive and some of them are just fairly mental. So on the mental side, you have people like Aleister Crowley, who was known as the Beast 666, and he advised his practitioners to do things like sacrificing the unborn through abortion and offering up dead babies to Satan. And he influenced all kinds of people, especially in the music industry. If you look at a lot of the imagery in things like even the Beatles, they refer to Crowley a lot. There was a book written with the links between Aleister Crowley and the modern music industry. So he was a big proponent of sex magic and death magic. And even apparently Aleister Crowley had his cutoff point, because he found the founder of Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard, to be distasteful. And so that should give you some idea of where Scientology comes from. But another very troubling character in the occult was Madam Blavatsky, or Helena Blavatsky. And I will get into her very shortly, because she is often referred to as the mother of the New Age. But on the flip side of these really troubling characters with extremely questionable morals and motivations were people who were actually pretty good. So Crowley tried to infiltrate the Order of the Golden Dawn, and they actually found him so problematic that they kicked him out. But another member from that particular society was Dion Fortune, and she had a lot to say on the mental repercussions of occult practice and also the moral implications of occult practice. And so she tried very much to stay the course with, I guess, Christian values, but of course that was not always possible. So I became interested in Rudolf Steiner because he wrote about biodynamics, which is kind of a type of organic farming. And I've been interested in environmentalism and the ecology for a long time. When I was a kid in church, we would do tree plantings, and we would do, Clean Up Australia Day, which usually fell around my birthday. But even though caring for the environment is not like an anti-Christian thing, it seems to be constantly commandeered by the New Age. So yeah, I was looking into Rudolf Steiner and his different lectures that he gave when he was part of the Theosophical Society. And then I started looking into the Theosophical Society, and I realized that he actually split with them. When I say split, he kind of took the Theosophical Society with him, and then the people who had founded the Theosophical Society actually went off and did something else. So the founder of the Theosophical Society was Helena Blavatsky. And Blavatsky was a Ukrainian aristocrat. She claimed that she went to Tibet and learnt about Buddhism from the monks there, but there's absolutely no record or proof that she did so. However, she did travel to America, and she did travel to India. And so she set up the Theosophical Society in the US. Blavatsky originally went to the US so that she could explore spiritualism, which was very popular after the Civil War, because people were constantly trying to get in touch with dead relatives. And so the Fox sisters, they started the movement when they were communicating with a disembodied spirit in their house when they were children, supposedly. Could be true, might not be true. Jury tends to be divided on that one. So Blavatsky went to the US in the 1870s, went to study spiritualism and mediumship, and then in 1875 she founded the Theosophical Society there. And if you want to know more about her theology, she wrote a book called The Secret Doctrine, and in that she basically replaced Christ with Lucifer.
Esoteric philosophy admits neither good nor evil per se, as existing independently in nature. The cause for both is found, as regards the cosmos, in the necessity of contraries or contrasts, and with respect to man in his human nature, his ignorance and passions. There is no devil or the utterly depraved, as there are no angels absolutely perfect, though there may be spirits of light and of darkness. Thus Lucifer, the spirit of intellectual enlightenment and freedom of thought, is metaphorically the guiding beacon, which helps man to find his way through the rocks and sandbanks of life, for Lucifer is the logos in his highest and the adversary in his lowest aspect, both of which are reflected in our ego.
So if you go to the Theosophical website, you can find these quotes that she wrote in her book, and they say on their website, you know, anyone who says that, oh, Lucifer is the devil, and so the Theosophical Society is based on Satanism, anyone who says that is ignorant. And they also claim, as Blavatsky claimed, that good and evil are relative, and that really it all comes back to the human ego and the struggle that we have with our own ego. So she hijacks Christ, and in that particular position she puts Lucifer, and then she also sanctifies the human ego. So these were the teachings that she based a lot of the Theosophical Society and subsequently the New Age on. But another thing that she did was she tried to blend the Christ consciousness kind of version of the New Age Jesus, who was in fact Lucifer, and she tried to blend that with Eastern traditions. So she introduced practices from Hinduism and also practices from Buddhism. So in particular, like meditation, yoga. And for those of you who don't know, yoga literally means to be yoked to Brahma. So it is a religious practice, and it is dedicating yourself to the god Brahma. So if you are practicing yoga, you cannot call yourself a Christian, because essentially it is a form of idolatry. So meditation, as I mentioned before, the jury is out on that one as to whether it has benefits or whether it really just opens you up to all sorts of things. Because depending on the type of meditation that you practice, and there is Christian forms of meditation, but they don't involve neutralizing your brain activity. They don't involve vacating your own mind, because vacating your own mind is considered to be a bit of a gateway for other things to kind of come in. It's a little bit like if you went to go for a walk and you just left your front door wide open and then hoped that when you came back from your walk, someone had left you a present. Like, that's fairly unlikely. And some of the other things that Blavatsky introduced from Eastern religions was the concept of karma, reincarnation, but basically she made some kind of bastardized conglomerate religion cobbled together out of all of these different limbs and pieces from other religions, similar to Frankenstein's monster. So why did she do that? Like, why mess with multiple different religions, including Christianity? Why relegate the historical figure of Jesus? And by the way, he is historically accurate. There is plenty written about him from both the Christians, the Jews, and the pagans, that historians can verify that he was a real person who really existed and was really crucified by the Romans and started a religion. If you don't believe me, you can read up on Tacitus and what he had to say about Jesus. So rather than leaving all of these religions alone, leaving them as they are, Blavatsky commandeered certain aspects of them and cobbled them together for a particular purpose. She reduced the historical person of Jesus to simply an ascended master and referred to the Messiah as Christ consciousness, and then introduced the concept of reincarnation so that she could start her own messianic movement. If you're not familiar with what messianic movements are, the Jewish people have been talking about this for a very long time, because they have had multiple occasions when someone has come forward and presented themselves as the Messiah. And I've spoken about this before in the form of Sabbatean Frankism, which was started in 1666 with Sabbatai Zevi, who claimed that he was a messiah but then later converted to Islam. And he was revived about 100 years later by a man by the name of Frank, who basically said that the best way to get the Messiah to manifest himself is if you do everything the reverse of what it says in the Bible. So he started having sex with his daughter. They advocated murder and stealing, and then he went on to be one of the founding members of the Bavarian Illuminati. So messianic movements have happened multiple times throughout the ages, but Christians believe that Jesus was the Messiah. Jewish people disagree, but that's, you know, kind of the debate of the ages, really. So Blavatsky and her cohorts were trying to start a new messianic movement, and they called it the Order of the Star in the East. They found some random 12-year-old boy in India called Krishnamurti, and they presented him as the reincarnation of Jesus, that Jesus was only one incarnation of the Christ consciousness, and that it had come back in the form of this 12-year-old boy. And so they tried to use this kid to start a particular religious movement. And later on, when he became an adult, Krishnamurti kind of became an atheist. He was like, I don't believe in any of this shit. So when this happened, Rudolf Steiner, and this was around 1912, he said, no, just no. He said, Jesus was a one-off event, it was a miraculous event, and he does not believe in the reincarnation of the Christ. So that was the great split between the Theosophical Society. So you might be saying, well, you know, each to their own, anything is possible, I'm keeping an open mind. The evolution of this blend between Christianity and Hinduism came in the form of a movement called Positive Christianity in the 1930s in Germany. Guess who invented that? So Hitler had this huge hatred for the Catholic Church. They held him to all kinds of different accountabilities, and he did not like it. He also vehemently hated Jewish people, and the fact that Jesus was Jewish was a problem. So he tried to do away with that problem by blending the Sanskrit with the Christian, and the swastika is actually an old Sanskrit sigil. And so rather than the Jewish people being the chosen people of God, which it says in the Bible, he believed that the Aryan race, which is associated with that particular sigil, was the chosen people of God and the superior race. Therefore, Jesus could not have been Jewish. Strangely enough, we are seeing a revival of this kind of thing in the form of Black Jesus. I don't know if you've seen the interview with Nick Cannon where he said a whole bunch of anti-Semitic strange rhetoric. But yeah, over the centuries, for as long as the Jewish people have been around, they have come under constant attack. And so this is one of those areas where you do not mess with it because genocide ensues. And so like that is why you should be very careful about anyone who talks about positive Christianity and negative Christianity, because that's literally what Hitler said. So when it comes to anything that messes with the Bible, messes with Christianity, you need to be extremely careful, because there is some crazy shit that goes down when that happens. And on the face of it, the New Age always seems to be about love and light, but it's so permissive of evil, because truth is relative and good and evil is relative. So you get this moral relativism where suddenly you don't necessarily know what the limits are. If you haven't seen the documentary on Nixium and the founder of that, you need to watch it.
Do you understand how you could rape a baby? I can make it a baby that's very rapeable.
Because this is what happens when you deny moral objectivity. People think that it's this very accepting and progressive movement, and then they're essentially being groomed. And it's not enough to simply say that you don't believe in something, because there is so much about like our legal system, which is actually based on the moral underpinnings of the Bible, that when you start playing with it, it just opens things up to levels that we can't navigate. Things like this quote from Richard Dawkins.
It's one thing to deplore eugenics on ideological, political, moral grounds. It's quite another to conclude that it wouldn't work in practice. Of course it would. It works for cows, horses, pigs, dogs, and roses. Why on earth wouldn't it work for humans? Facts ignore ideology.
Suddenly becomes a possibility. Like, if you don't have those stopgaps in place, how do you know what the limits are? So atheism and being agnostic is not really enough, and messing around with different religious practices is not a good idea. I mean, originally when it came to paganism, I thought I was engaging with a nature-based practice, which was all about caring about the environment, doing my bit, getting back to my traditional roots and finding out what that sense of belonging is. And instead what I found there was all of this squiffy new age stuff that, if you abandon all of the principles of the Bible, is just a slippery slope. And even if you try to apply the principles of the Bible to it, it's still a slippery slope. Like, you can't engage with it without encountering all of these crazy things. And so that's where my research led me. And that is why I was like, no, I have to cut this off. Like, this does not have a good history. And I have to say, since going back to church, going back and studying the Bible again, a whole bunch of things that were just so confusing absolutely cleared up. The New Age is very much like the philosopher Nietzsche said, they muddy the water to make it seem deep. But it's not deep, it's just full of shit. And trying to get to the bottom of it is impossible. Like, you can spend your entire life researching this stuff. And my partner, who is only just learning about Christianity now because I made him buy a Bible, he spent a good decade of his life researching this stuff. He wrote 4 books on the paranormal, and he has just had to abandon all of his work because it leads nowhere. And I hope that for people out there, you don't spend too long sifting and wading through all of this stuff, because it doesn't lead you anywhere truthful. So hopefully that clarified a few things. And thank you very much to people who have personally messaged me and told me about their own journeys and concerns. It's super interesting to hear your stories, and I really hope what I have shared today has helped to clear some stuff up rather than adding to the confusion. Alright, thanks for sticking around this long. If you're new here and you're interested in stuff, feel free to subscribe. I like D'Angelo Wallace's take on things, where he starts most of his videos with "Welcome to me talking about whatever I want," because realistically I don't have a plan for this channel. It's just stuff. Hopefully interesting stuff. Okay, take care out there, and I'll see you next time. Bye.